a big part of my passion has always been the community engagement work. Almost in every job in my career path has had a component of service in our community, as well as the marketing and communication component. For some reason, that's just what I've been attracted to,
Mhm.
probably since I started working. Just learn from others. Always be open to helping out and learning from others. And I think that when you're in the right company, they'll move you along into the position that you may want.
Today, I will be interviewing Mariana Tumlinson to learn a little bit more about what it's like to work in public and media relations as Director of Communications and Community Engagement. Mariana, thank you so much for being here today. We're very excited to have you on the show.
It's my pleasure. Thank you so much for thinking of me and inviting me to join you.
Of course. So we're going to go ahead and just get straight into our questions. We're going to
Sure.
start off with our first question, which is kind of a 3-in-1. So we want to know, in your own words, what do you do? Where do you live? And then when you were younger, what did you want to be when you grew up?
Okay. Great questions. All right. So the first one is, what do I do? So I am the Director of Communications and Community Engagement for the South Texas market of HCA. So it's Valley Regional Medical Center as well as Rio Grande Regional Hospital. Valley Regional is in Brownsville, and our sister hospital, Rio Grande Regional, is in the McAllen area in South Texas. That means that I take care of all, of course, internal and external communications. That can look a little bit like public relations as well. It can be media releases, being available to the media. And then we add in the community engagement component of the work, which is really connecting my colleagues and the organization with community organizations where we can invest our time, not just our money in the form of sponsorships, but we are really big on volunteerism. And I help coordinate that just to build relationships. It's not just the idea of going to a park and renovating the park, but really coming together and figuring out how we can have the most amount of impact, the strongest impact in our community. And we do that as one of the largest employers in our communities. So it's important to us to not only invest financially, but invest our time and our brain power in the community engagement space.
Right. Awesome. And then where do you live right now? Where do you work
Oh,
from?
yes. So I live in Rancho Viejo, which is about 10 minutes away from my Brownsville office in Brownsville and about 45 minutes away from my McAllen office at Rio Grande Regional Hospital.
And then whenever you were young, what did you want to be when you grew up?
Well, when I was so younger, I mean, youngest, I would
Yes.
say I wanted to be a dancer, a ballet dancer, but I don't do that anymore. And then I was looking back in my senior year, my yearbook. They, you know how they ask like, what do you want to do? You know, those kinds of questions. And it did say that I wanted to be in advertising. So a lot of what I do is directly or kind of indirectly in advertising as well. So I think there's marketing is a big umbrella in which communications and public relations and advertising all fall into that umbrella. So yeah, I'm doing kind of what I wanted to do when I was younger. Um, my inspiration for that, I want to say, was probably in elementary, middle school. There was a show called Who's the Boss? And I wanted to, she would just wear awesome suits, and she was in advertising and marketing, and that's where I got the idea, I think. Yeah.
Sweet. So you've stayed kind of in the same realm, same headspace as when you were a kid. You kind of knew what you were going into.
Yeah. So a big part of my passion has always been the community engagement work. So it's almost in every job in my career path has had a component of service in our community, as well as the marketing and communication component. For some reason, that's just what I've been attracted to,
Mhm.
probably since I started working.
That's
Yep.
awesome. And then how long have you been working in this field?
Well, at Valley Regional, I've been here almost 10 years. In July, it'll be 10 years. But in other employers and other organizations, I mean, I've been working since I was like officially working. I was 18 when I started working.
Wow.
And I worked in my grandfather's store probably starting at like the age of 10. But in the field that I'm in at Valley Regional, I've been here about 10 years. But like I said, I've worked in education. I've worked in the nonprofit world with United Way. I worked for university where I did a lot of, I worked with researchers and all of that had a big communication component,
Right.
creating newsletters, just a lot of communication work, manuals, just grant writing, all of that was involved in almost all the work that I've done as an adult.
That's incredible. And then did you go to school for this? Did you study communications or anything in that realm?
Yeah, so my undergrad is in liberal arts. So I majored in a double majored. So I double majored at liberal arts and business administration. So I had the liberal arts part of and the business component of it. I didn't focus on marketing per se because I wanted it to be a little bit more broad.
Mhm.
And then my graduate degrees, I have two. I have my first one was an MBA, Master's in Business Administration. Um, and then my second graduate degree is a Master's in Healthcare Administration.
Wow.
And
And
both of those had a big marketing component to it, but it wasn't the specialization.
right, you kind of just learn like a little bit more of a broader area of the work that you're doing now.
Yeah, and I think even maybe a higher level, I feel
Mhm.
that in order to be able to market or communicate, whatever term you want to give it, you really need to know the business side of things and how it works, so you can communicate it in an honest and kind of organic way.
Right. And then going off of that, would you say that any certain degrees or even certifications are required to, have a job like yours?
I think for communications, it's important that reading comprehension and writing and just write and reading and being able to listen to people. So those kinds of degrees, whether it be, communications obviously is it's a pretty obvious one. But if you want to do like I did liberal arts or English, I really don't know what undergrad degrees are out there nowadays. But I think anything when there's a lot of writing,
Mhm.
even maybe psychology, um, to be able to understand the way people think, the way that we can communicate. Because we always say that the one of the worst things that can happen in communication is to think that we've communicated when actually it hasn't happened. So
Mhm.
we really know how figuring out how to address different in different spaces and in different colleagues of different age ranges or maybe different backgrounds. And I think that there's different degrees that could do that. So, I mean, I don't think we need an engineering degree, or you may not necessarily need a biology degree, but I think in the liberal arts space, in the business management space, that would be very beneficial to the work.
Great, good to know. So, whenever it comes to your title, you currently serve as the Director of Community Engagement, like we were saying before. Is your kind of role ever referred to something else, or do they ever go by different titles? Anything in the public relations like area?
Absolutely. So my title is, and just to give you a little background, my title as of February 1st of this year is now Director of Communications and Community Engagement. Before that, it was Director of Marketing, Communications, and Public Relations. Before that, it was, so it's been all over the place. But so it's called Director of Marketing. I've been called Director of Public Relations, Community Relations, Media Relations, uh, engagement component. So public relations is more, I feel like more of the community, the communications part. So the relationships like with the media or with different maybe activities that happen, um, like the ribbon cuttings or press conferences, that kind of stuff. Community engagement, I feel, is more of the the volunteer, yeah, I guess volunteer work, but really more of the community creation and development work. So lots of titles, same hat.
Yeah, same job, doing the same things, just kind of called different things, different names.
Yeah. And I think with this, I would joke around that it's like that my job description is and all other duties is assigned, and
Right.
I think that I sort of enjoy that because I get to learn how to do other things and work with people that are a lot smarter than I am that I can learn from. So I think that that's I really enjoy that part. But going back to being able to do, I think a good job is to be able to work with all other departments and do the all of their duties as assigned, so we know how to talk about it and communicate.
Exactly. Kind of just checking the box, all of the above.
Yeah.
You're just everything someone needs you to be, you can do that. Now, talk to us a little bit about what a day in the life looks like doing your job. So we can start from clock in, clock out. What are the tasks in between? I'm sure it can vary day to day. What does a typical day look like for you?
Well, I a lot of it is checking in with my leadership team, making sure that there isn't anything, well, making sure that I know what's going on, something that happened overnight, maybe with a situation with a patient or something in the community that might make media, that might send out a media alert. And I also check the different news platforms to see if there's anything that I need to be aware of. That way, in case I get a call from a reporter, I'm not caught off guard. So
Mhm.
it's the situational awareness that I check first thing in the morning. Of course, checking emails is a big part of what I do. I think just that's how a lot of people work nowadays. They just shoot off an email and we assume that things are going to get done.
Mhm.
It's so checking in with admin, the situational awareness of the day. I am looking for news stories. I try to find ways to things to communicate about in the hospitals. So whether it be media releases or if it's going to be internal communications, if I need to develop comms, it usually involves design work. Um, and then the brief writing I try to do, instead of having long gone other days where we try to write 2 or 3 pages of something, it's more like 2 or 3 paragraphs that I'm trying to put out there, just because the attention span is so limited nowadays.
Mhm.
Then I try to walk around the hospital and just see how everybody's doing as well. And it's not just because I'm a busybody and I want to know what everybody's doing. It's really to again the situational awareness and
Exactly.
as part of being a leader in the hospital, making sure that people know that I'm available if they need anything, and also to learn what people's interests are. I certainly don't know everything that's going on in the hospital, but I know that when I talk to different people in different departments, we certainly learn a lot from each other.
Mhm.
When I like to discover people's passions and then feed into that, if there's a way that I can connect them to a community organization, I really do enjoy that. I also like to walk around and make sure that if there's a question, if there's a patient or a family member that has a question, that as a leader that I'm there to provide guidance and support. Doesn't happen every day, but that is a big part of what I do and a big part of what I enjoy doing.
Wow, that's
So yeah,
awesome.
lots of comms, a lot of design work, a lot of responding to um, questions. I spend a good amount of time on our social media platforms, checking reviews, responding to the reviews, not just the response on the platform, but also connecting them to the directors, or whether it be a patient safety director or the director of a department. If it's a positive review, we like to celebrate that. So I create little um, digital recognitions, and if it's a negative review, then I try to do some service recovery by connecting the director to the reviewer and making sure that there's an opportunity to fix any situation that there is. So a lot of social stuff, a lot of media alerts that I'm
Mhm.
reviewing. Again, situational awareness and responding to the community.
Yeah. And then with all of kind of the media and the social and everything that you need device-wise, are there any tools or technologies that you use as part of your job that you just can't live without?
Um, Unfortunately, my phone. the
Always.
phone, my cell phone is a big part of the work. There's some we use Meltwater software. It's a company that we partner up with on a enterprise level that helps mine through the media. So anytime our name comes up in the media, whether it be local, international, or national, or even international, it picks it up and then it notifies me. That way, I'm not having to scrub through every single media outlet. Not that we have a whole bunch down
Wow.
here, but I'm not checking out of region um, publications all the time. So this software it sends me alerts that the hospitals have been mentioned, so that I can look them up, and see what's being discussed about the hospitals. We call it reputation management, which is a big component of the work that I do.
That is so cool. What a cool software just to kind of give you an alert anytime you're mentioned. And
Yeah,
what parts of your job are the most exciting to you? So what gets you excited about your job to kind of get up and get going?
my favorite part is when I get to work with um, in a group setting where we're solving problems and we're maybe yeah, I guess the problem resolution, but also the creating of new things, and launching new things. And I love doing that in a group. I love to learn from others. And that's what gets me going in the morning, when I know that I'm going to be meeting in the group, uh, talking, planning things out, and making these like making a shared vision come to fruition is very exciting to do that in a group.
Right, I'm sure that must feel so rewarding. Do you work a lot? Does a lot of your work happen in a group setting, or are you ever working solo time also?
Both. So I do a lot of solo work just because of the nature of the job, like writing, that kind of stuff. But definitely do a lot of group work because a lot of my work can't get done in an individual setting. So even though I may sit in my office and may write, or I may work on the creative stuff, I do need input from different people, especially the subject experts, to um, to guide me in the way things are going to look. Because if we're talking about a new, for example, neuroendovascular case. Well, I don't know anything about that. I mean, I know enough to get me in trouble, but I don't know enough to confidently talk about it. So I definitely have to
Right.
reach out to, maybe I'll reach out to a neurologist, or I'll reach out to the service line director, and just to make sure that we're speaking the same lingo, and that we're communicating the right information.
And just making sure everything is kind of correct and fact checked and gone through,
Right,
a different set of eyes also.
for sure.
And what parts of your job are a little bit more challenging or emotionally draining, or more of kind of the boring negative sides that don't really get you excited? What are the more negative sides of your job?
For sure, I don't like the tediousness, like invoices and that kind of administrative stuff. Not my jam. I'm not really a
Mhm.
big fan of that. It has to get done though. Um, I think that, yeah, I think that's what I dislike the most. I don't Yeah, there's a lot of administrative stuff that, like I said, it needs to get done. But sometimes I feel like, oh, I could be doing so much more um,
Yes.
with my time, but it is what it is, right?
Yeah, I think it's just kind of like that creative side of your brain that kind of is turning on and wanting to do more work. So when it kind of comes to more paperwork and sitting down and having to do the boring stuff, not as exciting, I'm sure. When it comes to work setting, are you able to kind of like leave all your work at the office, or do you ever have to take some home with you?
I know this isn't healthy, but I always take it home. Well, and here's the thing. So in my field, it doesn't happen very often, but we're as leaders, we're pretty much on call 24/7. If something happens in the evening, I'm gonna get a call because it goes back to situational awareness. Um, like I said, it doesn't happen very often, but let's say, something happened, or there's a trauma case that's coming in at 2 o'clock in the morning, and they feel that it might make the news. I get a call so I can be ready to
Mm.
respond. So I'm always kind of have that in the back of my mind. I wonder what's happening. Is everything okay? Um, I don't take it home with me because it's like a heartbreaking thing. I take it home with me um, because I'm always thinking I'm look. So let me give you an example. When my husband and I have traveled, he makes fun of me because I'm always like we were in an elevator once. And I'm like, ooh, I like this marketing thing. I like the way that they communicated this. Or we'll be at a restaurant and or we'll be watching TV and it's some kind of medical show, and I'm like, ooh, that's a good idea. Let me do this. And so I'm always looking for the creative side of things and how I could do
Mm-hmm.
better. And so when I see something out in the community or when I'm traveling, especially when I'm traveling, I like to see how uh, other communities do things. I'm always like taking notes and seeing how I can bring those nuggets of information home.
Yeah, and your husband's like, just let me watch the show. Just let me enjoy the vacation. But you're kind of
Yeah.
always going. But I think that's a sign that you're exactly where you're meant to be and that you're perfect for your role. If that's kind of just your second
Oh, thank
nature,
you.
it's just what you do. It just
Mhm.
goes to show, how perfect you are for that.
Oh, thank you.
Are you able to work flexible hours in this position or even like a hybrid setting, or is it more common to do set hours in office?
I think it's more flexible. Um, because there's a lot of times where I'm working on the weekends or I'm working later in the evening because there's a community event that we have to go to, or maybe a hospital event that happens after hours. So if I need to come in a little bit later in the day, then that's fine. I pretty much set my own schedule. Now, personally, I like to be at the hospital, especially when my CEO is around, in case he needs anything. But for the most part, and I'm very grateful to my past few CEOs who have been fine with me working from home if I have to. I don't do it very often. I like to be in the hospital setting. I will say I like to keep my home, my respite, my clear stuff, my space away from work. So I do have an office at home, but I try not to bring a lot of it home, a lot of the work home, just because I need to make that have a boundary of where work um, ends and where my personal life continues. And that's just what works for me, but it's pretty flexible. Um, yeah.
Are there any busy seasons in this job? So do you ever find yourself at a certain time of year kind of picking up more or even slowing down a little bit, or is it pretty constant throughout the whole year?
It's pretty busy throughout the year, but I would say the busiest time would be around November and December, just because there's so many events happening in the community because of the holidays, but also inside of the hospital because we love celebrating our employees and recognizing their efforts. And because it's holiday season, I would say even maybe October, it gets really busy. And it's not necessarily from a communication standpoint, but certainly from a community engagement stance. It does get busy.
And speaking a little bit more about community events, what kind of events do you typically put on and connect with the hospital that you work for?
So some of my favorite ones are, for example, my lunch and learns, where I take a physician or subject matter expert with me to a local organization, and I provide lunch to all the employees or whomever shows up, and the physician will speak at about a specific topic. And I like that because we also have evening events that I will conduct. But sometimes it's hard for people to get when they're out of work to go to this kind of event. So I love to take the event to them at work in a space where, hey, they're already going to sit there, maybe eat lunch. Let me provide lunch and let me provide the wellness education. I think that the wellness education component of my work is very important, and I am very proud of it, because the more people know about their health and the more they are empowered to make decisions about their health, the better and safer and healthier our community will be. So if I can take that information to people at their work, that makes me happy. So that,
Yeah.
and then we also have the ribbon cuttings, and we have the service line announcements, and we do have the evening events that the hospital puts on. And I would say that the common shared vision or the shared theme is community wellness. and
Yeah.
wellness education. Mm-hmm.
That's awesome. And then are you doing all the outreach for all of these events? Or are you ever partnering with kind of companies and they're doing the outreach and you kind of just link and schedule, or is it primarily you yourself?
Primarily myself. So when it involves a hospital, if it's a hospital-led event, then I run point. Um, and so I'll reach out to the businesses and I'll say, hey, can we partner up and we'll do that. We'll work together.
Mhm.
But I try um, to be the leader of it, to lead it that way, protecting the brand and protecting um, just the interest of the organization is very important.
Right. What do you think that people sometimes underestimate about this profession?
I joke around about, oh, people think that I'm a party planner, and yeah, I mean, I certainly can put on a great event, but people I think don't see they underestimate what goes into it, the back end of things. A lot of making sure that things are they look a certain way, that they feel a certain way, that things are communicated a certain way, and that the right people are there in the sense like, is it the right speaker, is it the right audience, and I think that that takes time, and so it's not just, oh, we throw it together and we show up. There's a lot of stuff that happens, a lot of the planning, and I think people underestimate that. I think people underestimate that, oh, putting a media release together, just, oh, we can just do that in a few seconds. And I think it takes some time to think things through, um, and to think things through for the immediate media release, but then what are the implications for future conversations and communication. So I think people take that for granted. We got to think more on a macro level of what we're communicating, not just today, but more, 6 months from now or 1 year from now.
Definitely. And what do you think that people overestimate? So this could be kind of like an overhyped idea or a very positive assumption, very negative assumption. Do you ever hear things that you're like, that's not exactly what this looks like?
About the work, I think that people overestimate some of the advertising and marketing. I think that uh, it's so targeted now, and there's so much opportunity to invest our marketing dollars in a, like I said, in a more targeted manner. That people think, oh, we need to be in every single platform, and not all platforms are created equal, and not all service lines need all the same platforms. And I think people think, oh, let's just put it out there and people are going to see it. Nah, I don't think that that's how. You got to be more specific and more intentional about the audiences. Um, and so I think that that's part of it. That, oh, that marketing is going to work no matter what you do. It's like, no, there's a science behind it. There's, we look into it. We look at who the audience is, who's driving by, who's going to attend this event, and then even on the back end, like the amount of clicks something got,
Mhm.
and just the views and engagement numbers. I think, I guess that would be the underestimating part of it, but people underestimate or overestimate that, that it just works just because you put it out there.
Right. There's a lot that goes behind it, like you said, from like the science and even like math and numbers and logistics, as well as like business as well. And even earlier, like you mentioned, kind of like psychology and all of that aspect that plays into what you do as well. What is the fastest way to get into this profession, especially if someone that kind of has a non-traditional background, doesn't necessarily have any experience in the media area? What do you think is the fastest and most effective way to get to where you are today?
I think that I would recommend, getting into a company that you love. I say do the research. It's not just about the job itself, but the work environment. So do the research on a company you love and find your way in. Whether you go in as an intern or mid level, I think just get your foot in the door and start uh, creating or networking and creating these relationships with colleagues that could possibly open doors because you look like you want to be, or you become the go-to person. And I always say just learn from others. always be open to helping out and learning from others. And I think that when you're in the right company, um, they'll move you along uh, into the position that you may want. You again find the company that you like. And then I remember working when I was in college. I worked at a company, and they would tell us, find the person whose job you want and go up to them and tell them, I want your job. I'm going to get your job. Because that person then will say, perfect. They will become your mentor, and they will show you how to become to get into that position, because that person
Mhm.
has probably told somebody else, I want your job. And so as that person is being pulled up into a promotion, that they can pull you up as well. So develop that network of colleagues that can help you get into the positions that you want. And also remember that it's your responsibility too to bring people up with you as well.
Yeah, I love that. That was perfectly said. What other fields are people coming from before they get into a role like yours? Do you ever see themes or is it kind of just random?
No, I've seen a lot of other colleagues of mine within the company and outside the company that used to be journalists. They were in journalism, and they worked in journalism for a while, and then they got into the community relations in the public relations area, which I would assume is kind of the other side when you're a journalist. Um,
Yes.
and so a lot of them have there's that common theme of journalism,
Mhm.
and of course the marketing side of things, but a lot
Of
of
course.
journalists, a lot
That
of
is
journalists.
like, that's music to my ears because I'm so interested in what you're doing and I'm studying journalism. So I feel like this is a confirmation because
Yeah,
I think what you do is so, so interesting and it's fun and there's a business side and there's all these different aspects to it. So I love that you went ahead and mentioned that. I feel like little pat on my back, I'm doing the right thing. What do you
good.
think that somebody has to be very good at or just overall enjoy doing to succeed in a role like yours?
I think being around people and learning from people, I think you need to be able to write and just communicate. For me, I mean, my nature is to just constantly be learning. That's what I like to do, learning from others, and then to have a serving heart, especially with the community engagement component of the work. It's really figuring out how to connect people. Um, who I always tell people, well, where do you want to volunteer? And they say, well, I don't know. And I tell them, well, I can help connect you. Tell me what your heart bleeds for, and then I'll find an organization that you will be passionate about. And and that makes me very happy when I get to connect people to a passion of theirs. So I would say, be find joy in just serving people, helping people, and then telling their stories.
Yeah, I love that. How long do you think it typically takes for somebody to start getting comfortable or good at this role?
Oh, I'll tell you in a few years when I get comfortable in the role.
Always learning, always growing, like you said before.
Just kidding. I think that depends on the organization. In healthcare, so I could say I was pretty comfortable, and I had been doing things for let's say 6 years a certain way, and then pandemic came around and
Mm,
completely changed the way that we do things. I'm sure, naturally at a global level, but in the hospital level, we learned, I mean, we had to figure out how to communicate in a different manner, and in a different, at a different speed. Uh, Things were changing so quickly that we learned that we had to keep up with that. I wasn't comfortable with that because that wasn't the way that we were doing work, but I had to get comfortable real quick, and
mm,
then just learn how to do things. And I think in this role, because it's always evolving, I don't think there's ever a moment where you say, "Oh, I've got it completely figured out."
right.
Um, because then I think that if I get too comfortable, then I feel my work might get stale, and I'd rather just keep evolving and not feel completely comfortable with what I'm doing, because I feel like once I get comfortable, I might stop wanting to learn, and that's not my default setting.
Yeah, of course, just always growing. And like you said before, learning from other people and from experiences. Like I'm sure that pandemic, I mean, not only was it detrimental to the world, but as well as especially the healthcare industry. So kind of talk to me a little bit about that. How did the pandemic affect your work?
I mean, I think for me, I'll tell you on a personal level and then a professional level. So professionally, the speed, the platforms, people were not reading emails. I was having to print things and slap them on walls and this is internally, where people could just get quick information. And it was so, like I said, the information was changing from sometimes hour to hour. So we were figuring out how to communicate from the engagement component, figuring out how we could still serve our community in a safe manner. And we worked that out. We were still what was interesting is that the tables turned in a sense where so blessed and it was beautiful where we had a lot of community organizations want to serve us and
Right.
our folks. And so that was an interesting turn of things that we were very grateful where people were sending us food and like Living Way put on a concert in our parking lot, which I'll forever be grateful. And so that was different. We were not used to receiving that kind of love, and then we were used to giving it, and now we were receiving it. So that was a huge blessing, and the tables were turned on that. Um,
Mm,
I would say that personally was learning how to celebrate the little wins amidst a very somber time. So as there was a lot of death happening and a lot of uncertainty. Um, Still, one of my jobs, along with some of my team members, was figuring out how to still bring joy and encouragement and motivation to those that were actually touching patients and being around them. And we just pivoted and we figured out, and it was going to be different every day. And it was going to, some days were going to be not so bad days, and some days were just going to be awful. And we learned to respect the awful and not try to happy our way out of that. And then, like, let people sit with the emotions, and then figured out how we were going to still bring joy and communicate the goodness that was happening by being and being respectful of and acknowledging that bad stuff was happening too. So we had to that was a change where we had to figure that out, how we were still going to be, we can't just go around saying everything's awful, but at the same time we can't not acknowledge that things were awful.
yeah,
So
definitely.
yeah, that was something that we had to navigate both professionally and personally in with my colleagues throughout my division.
Definitely. And thank you for sharing that. I'm sure it did feel kind of full circle to having, you and your team be providing all these acts of service for the community, engaging and helping others to kind of receiving that back and,
Yeah,
having that full circle act of humanity come together. That must have been a
yeah,
really beautiful thing to witness.
very beautiful to be a part of that.
Moving on to kind of the promotion path in a role like yours, is there a promotion path? Does that exist? And if there is, what does it look like?
A promotion path. There's opportunities to move in, especially in my company. I mean, there's 180 hospitals throughout the company, so there's mobility opportunity there. So if you're wanting to move and kind of be in other spaces, um, I think that so we could go in from maybe I started as a manager and then got promoted to a director position. But I'm sure that there's opportunity to go into more like AVP roles, associate vice president, and then there's also the kind of the just the moving to another position, kind of in the same directorship level, but maybe doing something a little bit different, a little bit more focused, maybe doing just the social media, more of the analytics component of it, which is that's happening um, at more of our corporate level. So yeah, I think that there's opportunities to do different things, and then also to keep in mind that even though the job title is communications and community engagement, there's stuff where a company may want just PR, or a company may want just the media relations component of it. So I think that there's a lot of opportunity to do different things, or maybe go back into journalism.
Yeah, because like you said before, it is kind of like two separate areas. So you have the communication and then the community engagement. So pooling those together can also be their own separate worlds as well.
Yes, yes.
All right. And then what is the average salary for somebody at your level? You can provide a range, even if it's broad, because I'm sure it looks different for different companies and in different states even. But if you could give us a range, what would that be?
I think it depends. I mean, I've seen it from maybe starting off in the 60s to, I mean, if it's going to be like at a VP level, it can be, maybe 150, 200,000. It just depends on the company and the location as well, and the ranking of it. Um, I think that, uh, yeah, if it's I think a smaller company, naturally it'll be, I think, not as high as if it were with a large company, especially even if it would be international. It just depends on the company. That's how I always say, pick your companies, see what you're interested in, based on the company as
Yeah,
well. I think
exactly. I'm
looking at
sure.
companies is a big deal. I think it's important in any career that you choose to look at company culture. I think company culture is a big deal. I mean, if you're we spend more time at work than we do with our family, so it better be a place that you really enjoy being at. And just like any
Yeah.
job, we're gonna have our good days and our bad days, but make sure that we have a shared culture and a mutual respect, a mutual understanding of respect and culture is very important to me. And I would recommend that people, um, to look into that. So if you're looking for a bigger organization, maybe that'll be where the salary range that you're interested in will land.
Exactly. And then what drew you in for you work for Valley Regional Medical Center and the company HCA? What kind of drew you in about those two companies that you were like, I want to be here and this is where I am, this is where I'm happy?
I'll tell you what. So my previous job was with United Way of Southern Cameron County. I used to be the director of Partnership Post Secondary Success, which is a grant based program where we brought in we brought in different people, different organizations to the table to talk about education, how we could connect education, like high school education, to post secondary education, and in the workforce. But before that, at United Way, I was the director of resource development, so I was their fundraiser essentially,
Mhm.
and used to do a fundraising campaign at Valley Regional that would last about 4 to 6 weeks sometimes. I think the longest I was here was 6 weeks. So I would come to Valley Regional every day and I'd run a fundraising campaign. And I love the fact, number one, that they let me in. That's great culture. They have a culture of giving and of really investing in our community. That checked the box for me. And then since I got to hang out with different colleagues and I got to meet different people that worked here at the hospital, I fell in love with them. I fell in love with the culture. I fell in love with, I would hang out in the cafeteria and people would come in like, hey, Mariana, and they recognize me. So it was just that culture of giving, but also just people being very welcoming. And then I think what sealed the deal for me was during one of those campaigns, my grandfather was visiting from Tampico, where we're from, and he fell here in Brownsville, and he broke his hip, and so he came to Valley Regional, and so I got to then see the other side of the nurses. So I saw them in the fun way in the cafeteria and how they were investing. But then I got to spend time with a lot of them. My grandfather was here for almost 8 weeks and they cared for him like he was their grandfather. And that meant
Wow.
the world. And so I felt like this is where I would want to be. And what I did was I told the previous, I think they call her like public relations director. I don't remember the name. And going back to it's had different titles. I told her, I said, Robin, when you retire, I want your job.
Mhm.
I love being here, and I think your job is the one that I want to do. And sure enough, she called me 2 years later, and she said, I'm getting ready to retire. Get ready to apply for this position.
Oh my gosh, I just got goosebumps. That's crazy. That how awesome.
Yep.
Wow.
So I took what I learned when I was in college, and I may not remember everything I learned I don't remember everything I learned in college, but I do remember that being put in my mind that if you want, it's okay to ask for help and tell people, hey, this is what I want. Can you help me get it?
Yeah.
And if they say no, then move on. But who knows? Maybe they're getting ready, or maybe to leave, or maybe they are getting ready to open up a new position, or maybe they know somebody, another organization. And so I think it's perfectly acceptable, and I even encourage it to share what your interests are, and where you want to be, because that worked out for me.
Yeah, exactly. Just kind of starting with that first statement of, I want to do what you do. How can I get there? And then now look at you. I mean, serving in this role for the past 10 years, who knows
Yeah.
if that would have been possible if you hadn't kind of opened up that door for yourself. So speaking of people kind of moving on and going into other things, do you ever see themes when it comes to people moving on after a role like yours of what they typically go into? Or do people spend the entirety of their career in your role?
I can't think of anybody that's left to do something different. I know some people in other systems that have left to do more of like business development work. Um, yeah, the business side of things, maybe sales, to do the kind of the sales part of the work. Um, that's that's what I've seen. I haven't really seen a whole lot that I left. I've only been doing this for 10 years, and
Yeah.
the people that I've been getting to that I get to work with. So again, I work in Brownsville and McAllen, but I also belong to a division that has 16 other hospitals. So my colleague in Corpus has been there for like 20 years. Um, my colleague who was at Rio and McAllen is now doing business development. She was in this role for also about 15 years. And then in my Houston market, they've all pretty much either stayed or gone on to another system doing around the same thing,
Yeah,
and
that's
or
very
business
interesting.
development. Mhm.
Interesting. Are there any books or resources, certifications, anything that you can think of that you would recommend to somebody wanting to get a start in a role like yours?
There's two books, and they're by Chip and Dan Heath. They're brothers, and there are two of the books that I have read and that I really enjoyed, and it's helped kind of see things differently. The first one is called Switch, and it's kind of how to change people's minds, and then the work that we do in communications, and then just kind of the marketing world. I
Exactly.
think that's been a great book for me to learn how to convince people, uh, or to learn how to move people to do things.
Mm,
Um, and the other one was Decisive, and that's more of just how to make better decisions, or and quicker decisions. One of the things that I learned from that one is what they say, trust your gut. But part of that for me has been developing that trust in my gut, and that just takes time and experience, and to be listening to. I think when the exposure of things, you learn it, and then you have gut feelings about things, and I
mm.
think that um, using that to make decisions has been helpful. But and that comes from those two books.
So, for our last question, we want to
Yeah.
know if you had the opportunity to look back at yourself at the beginning of your career and tell her something, what would it be?
Wow. Well, it's something that I tell myself now, and that I tell my daughter now. So my daughter is kind of in the PR industry as well. I had a good friend of mine who was a colleague of mine tell me, now remember, this is PR, not ER.
I love
And
that.
that reminds me that I need sometimes I need to step away, and just from a mental health perspective, to realize that I don't have to get everything done in the moment.
Mhm.
And so just kind of take things in stride. Um, the other thing is to make sure to make time for. I always say it's kind of like people say, make time for your family, and I think it's, well, make time for work, because your family should be priority, and the family should always be number one, and
Mhm.
then work. would come second. So I don't always follow that advice, but I definitely, it's something that I've been learning to how to do the past few days. I mean, the past few years is just, making sure that we draw the boundaries. And then the other one that I like to that I learned that I tell my daughter now is that part of setting boundaries, the hardest part about setting boundaries is not necessarily setting the boundaries, but it's communicating the boundaries. And how do we tell people what our boundaries are? And and that can be hard sometimes, but also to remember that those boundaries are for ourselves and for our benefit. And if people don't like them, then that's something that they have to get over, not you. But I think in any profession is learning how to communicate, how to set your boundaries and communicate them, um, to whether it be to protect your own mental health, or
Mhm.
whether to be to get some job done. Sometimes we're just going to have to say no to somebody. Hey, can you do this for me? It's going to be no or not now, and we need to be okay with that,
Yeah.
because when we have a greater goal that we have to, something that's going to take more precedent, or more, what's the right word, it's just going to be more important at the time, that I had to learn to be comfortable with saying no or not right now.
Right.
And so that's what I would tell my younger self, is just be comfortable with that.
Right. Well, that's awesome. Thank you so much, Mariana, for your time and all the insight that you shared into what it looks like to be Director of Community Engagement as well as Communications. I know I was able to learn so much, and I know our audience will too. So thank you so much. I very much
Yeah,
enjoyed our
thank you.
discussion today.
Me
Yeah.
too. Thank you for the opportunity, and I look forward to seeing more. And welcome back home. I love that you're here
You.
visiting, and good luck to you. Best of luck to you.
Thank you so much. Appreciate that.
You just got one episode closer to learning about the world of jobs out there. To explore the rest of our career categories and find your best fit, go to jobdictionary.com to sign up for the beta users waitlist. Then subscribe here to find the next episodes coming out this week. And as always, drop us a comment, review, or message to let us know how we can better attune our episodes to your specific needs. Follow us on TikTok, Instagram, Facebook, LinkedIn, X, Threads, Pinterest, and wherever else you're on socials to go get our short, snappy preview reels that expose you to new job options every day. Because here at Job Dictionary, we believe your big aha moment can be just one scroll away. Go check it out and get out there. Cheers!